Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I am going to just share my screen really fast so you guys can see what's going on. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. I have a relationship panel to introduce to you guys today. And they are here to talk to us about the changes in kind of the dynamic of the relationship and just some of the things that they have done personally to navigate their own diagnosis and how this has kind of come together for them in dating and dating their spouses, in being married, in getting married in the first place. And so we're going to be talking with them. And first up, I'm going to introduce these guys as they come in, and then we'll pull everybody up on the screen. So first up, we've got Alexis and Duncan, and they are a couple who met nearly 13 years ago in Mexico. They've lived together in England for nearly half their time together. Duncan is actually originally from Manchester, and they both now live here in the States, in Chicago, with their two children and their dog. They recently celebrated 10 years of marriage, so congratulations. And Alexis was actually diagnosed with ocular melanoma in January of 2020. They both obviously were very shocked at her diagnosis, and the constant threat of metastasis can be overwhelming at times for their family, but they do strive to focus on embracing each day fully with as much joy as possible. Next up, we are joined with Stephen and his husband, Joe. So Stephen Russell and Joe Pisano from New Jersey. Stephen and Joe actually met in 1992, and 4 years later, they became a couple and now live in New Jersey with their two corgis. Corgis, they're dogs. At a routine eye optometrist checkup, and after a whirlwind of subsequent appointments, Stephen was actually diagnosed with choroidal melanoma in March of 2008. They both are now retired. Stephen is a freelance musician, a yoga teacher, and a licensed massage therapist, while Joe is now a retired software engineer, and he spends much of his time in musical pursuits, including playing guitar, piano, I should say including but not limited to playing guitar, piano, handbell, and hand chimes, and even composing his own music at times. All right. We're also joined by Emily Bingham from, I believe, Hawaii right now. You can correct me when I'm wrong, or if I'm wrong, Emily. So, Emily is actually a grief coach and a fitness professional, a mother of two, and a widow as of March 2019, when her husband, Ian, actually passed away from uveal melanoma. Ian and Emily met as college sweethearts, and they were actually very stunned, of course, by Ian's diagnosis in April of 2011. Despite this fear of the unknown, they started their lives together, and they actually had two children. And then in August of 2017, Ian's cancer metastasized, and over 15 months of experimental treatments after that period, Ian actually passed away. As Emily has rebuilt her life this last I guess it's been 2-3 years almost. I can't even do math. I can't do math. But as Emily has rebuilt her life as a single mom and the head of her household, she has found herself at times overwhelmed by grief and paralyzed by the reality of her new normal. As a former ballerina and a current fitness instructor, she actually turned to movement to cope with her grief when verbalizing it was too much. So in December of 2019, she founded Move Through, which is her grief coaching practice. Finally, we have Kristen McDonald, who is also joining us from Chicago. Small world, guys. Kristen is 28, and she works as a post-producer for commercials, including national campaigns like State Farm's NFL work. She is the middle child in a family of 5, and she has a love for adoption, as both she and her sister were adopted into her family, and they still maintain close relationships with their birth moms. Kristen met her current boyfriend, Kyle, 4 years ago through mutual friends, and she was diagnosed with ocular melanoma in January 2021, so this year, after stumping 9 previous doctors with her symptoms for a year. Kristen currently enjoys road trips, walks by the lakefront, and long weekends in Michigan with her boyfriend, Kyle. All right, so let's go ahead and bring these guys up on the screen. Okay, everyone's coming up. Hello.
Hi, everyone.
All right, and we also have Suzanne here from our board. She is going to be here to help with questions and just kind of help with this discussion. So before we get started, because I'm the social media guru, everybody wave. I'm going to do a boomerang. Okay, I'm going to not wave. I'm going to tap my head. All right, perfect. So You guys, thank you so much for being here. I know this was kind of a crazy idea, and it was also kind of last minute. So thank you guys for participating and for being here. And Emily from Colorado right now, but you have lived in Hawaii, which both of those places are awesome. Um, so as we go through, I'm going to just kind of follow the line of the panel as I see you guys on the screen. So I've got Kristen up first, and then Alexis and Duncan, Emily, Joe and Steve, Joe and Steven, and we will just kind of go through the questions that way. And bear with us if you guys are watching. Please feel free to drop anything in the chat if you guys have questions for these guys. And we are going to dive in. So I've just got a few questions for you guys to start with. So, all right. For those of you who are here, how did your relationship kind of change? Or I guess I'm going to start with question two. Sorry. How did you deal with this? Like as you were diagnosed with ocular melanoma, or in your case, Emily, as Ian was diagnosed with ocular melanoma, what were some of the things that you kind of dealt with as individuals? Kristen, you're up first.
I would say that, it was kind of a shock since at first I was relieved because I've been chasing answers for a previous year with different doctors that they found something to move forward with. But then all of a sudden, the word cancer sunk in, and I didn't know if this was like a matter of months or what came with this diagnosis. So it was hard. I stared at my phone, and I thought about, because I was diagnosed in January of this year, I was there alone, and I thought about texting my parents and Kyle, and the weight that would put on them too as we think about moving forward in this year. And instantly, the biggest thing I started to mourn was the fact that I wasn't going to be dreaming the same. Everything seemed like big maybes, like maybe I'd be able to see an engagement in my future or marriage or kids. And that was kind of the darkest part for me, is, like how to move forward with, all of these maybes in life. So I think as an individual, I just was really overwhelmed by that and really saddened that I had to also share this news with the people I loved as well.
That totally makes sense. And I can really relate to that as well. Alexis and then Duncan, if you guys don't mind sharing just kind of your individual reactions maybe to Alexis's diagnosis.
Well, yeah, originally, obviously it's a shock and a scare, and you just want to get treated. That was my biggest thing. Let's just move on with this, get the tumor treated, and then roll with the next step. Of course, I hope that, I don't ever get any metastasis, but I feel like we do kind of live life, 3 months at a time right now, because we're getting the scans. And, just this morning we booked a trip for April with a couple friends, and they were like, oh, well, I don't see any reason that we need to get any, travel insurance on this. And I'm like, there could be a million reasons why we cancel this by come April of next year. So that stuff, the thought of dying, it crosses my mind every single day, but I don't let it take over my day. I don't let it sink in. It just kind of passes through. I don't give it much time to take over my mood or what we're doing. Yeah, I just, I thank my body every day that I wake up and still here.
So do you feel like it's gotten easier for you, Alexis, over time to do that, to kind of like let go of some of the stress and the anxiety versus when you were first diagnosed?
Yeah, yes. And then obviously when I got the news that I was high risk, that kind of pushed me back down a little bit, but I'm fine with that now. I've accepted it. Like I say, it always comes through my mind. There's no way that I can like not let it pass through. But I don't let it take over. I don't know. I think it does
Good
get
point.
easier, but the thought is always there. And then you think, oh gosh, how far along am I? Oh gosh, okay, well, am I going to get to this year? Or am I going to get to this year without anything happening? But yes, I'm just thankful every day, really, to be here.
Awesome. Well, Duncan, how about you when you first learned of Alexis's diagnosis, and what's helped you cope since then?
Well, like everybody, really, I was sort of shocked and stunned. Really, I didn't even know that this type of cancer existed. And then, when they were diagnosed and they said the C word, it's incredibly worrying. For everyone. Obviously, Alexis more than anyone, really, and you just worry about the short, medium, and long term effects and how it's going to affect your life. And then following on, a close second to that is how it affects our children moving forward as well, because they're only 8 and 5. And we're not gonna tell them anytime soon, but I do feel a little anxious about when we should be telling the children about the diagnosis and how it will affect them as well.
I feel like that's maybe a valid question and a valid thing to kind of be concerned about as parents. Emily, I know you kind of have a different situation, but your perspective is more, on when Ian was diagnosed shortly after you guys were in college. This was before you guys had kids.
Yeah.
But what happened for you guys?
Yeah, it was interesting. Ian and I were college sweethearts, and we dated all 4 years of college. And we actually decided to take a break to kind of go explore our worlds individually before we committed to each other anymore. So Ian was in China at the time, and I was in Pittsburgh. And I remember receiving the call that he couldn't see one morning, and that there was a tumor in his eye, and it was cancer. And long story short, I would say that his diagnosis actually brought us back together in a really twisted turn of fate. But he returned back to the United States, and I think for us, it really solidified what was important, and that we really loved each other. And although the future was unknown, we wanted to continue exploring our relationship together. And shortly after his initial diagnosis, he proposed. And, we were living each day by the moment, but I think Ian's positive mindset really allowed me to kind of let go of the fear of the future and to choose love. So it was horrible and beautiful at the same time, I guess.
I feel like that's such a good point that it's really terrifying and traumatic, but it also can, like you said, bring you together in some beautiful ways. What about you, Stephen and Joe?
I don't know how much it's hard to see how much it has changed our relationship. We had already been a couple for 12 years when I was diagnosed. So we were, we had a lot of set in our own ways kind of thing. I think what it allowed me to see a different aspect of Joe. I'm the worrier. I'm the high anxiety. I'm the stress monster. And then to have this happen, I would think I was more like in shock for a couple of years. I can't say I really deeply reacted to my diagnosis, but I think he did. So to see him be the worrier worrying about me was weird, because it's like, wait, that's my job. But I think the things that may have affected our relationship are the changes that I made. Um, I started worrying way much less about my career, markers of my career, my status, and I kind of, I had all this other stuff to worry about. So worrying about those kind of life issues weighed way less on my mind. I became a yoga teacher. I went to yoga training. I became a licensed massage therapist. So I kind of not really backed off of my career as a musician, but it took on way less importance. So then I felt freer. I felt freer to do other things. I retired from my full-time job. I'm now self-employed. So I think I'm not saying that made me a different person, but it changed a lot of the dynamic in our relationship. So I don't know, maybe Joe, maybe you can talk more about how things
Yeah,
might have
what's your perspective on this? Do you agree?
Actually, when he said he thought I was worried. I mean, I guess at the beginning I was, but I felt like I took more of a pragmatic approach, like being an engineer, you solve problems, right? So, okay, what do we have to do now to address this, right? So, we get the surgery. Stephen had the plaque installed. Do the yearly visits to Philadelphia, Wills Eye Center, and as it progressed, as we went year after year, and the doctor said, "Oh, it's shrinking, it's shrinking." That gave me kind of a positive outlook on things. That okay, this is working, and I feel better. I'm more confident about the outlook and everything. So to me, it was like a more pragmatic approach, and just supporting Stephen in his decisions. I mean, I know he came to me and said, "Oh, I really am not fulfilled in my job anymore. I want to retire." And we talked about it, and I said, you deserve happiness. So, I'll support you in that decision. And, yeah, it's really, that kind of support of his changes and in what he wanted to pursue in his life. So,
Well, I think you weren't able to come with me when I went to Will's. I went to the eye doctor. She sent me to a retina specialist. He sent me to Will's Eye Hospital for this minor freckle. I'll just get some pictures taken. So I made the appointment. He was going to take me. He had to work. He couldn't take me. A friend took me, and that's the day I got diagnosed. And it's like it would have been really cool if he had been there. But he wasn't there, and I think he was disappointed that he didn't go. But neither of us knew that this was going to be anything life-threatening, and no idea that this could have been cancer, and I was going to get diagnosed that day. So I think that was a weird situation. But then he was with
Yeah,
me
for
when
sure.
I got the biopsy. I know this is presented by Castle, but my biopsy was the monosomy disomy one, not the Castle numbers. And
Was
so
it the impact genetics?
it was either monosomy or disomy.
Yeah.
That was the only option. And he came with me that day, and he was in the room, and then the doctor came in and said, I was expecting, oh yeah, it's going to be the easy one, and it wasn't. It was the dangerous one, and he was
So
there.
I guess I'm curious. Do you feel like you noticed for you guys, and I'm going to ask the rest of you guys this question too. Do you feel like you noticed a difference maybe in how you were able to support each other in the times that you had someone with you, maybe at appointments versus the times that you didn't have your support person with you, just by nature of circumstance?
It helps, yes.
It helps. Yeah.
Or it has given us so many things to talk about that we might not have ever talked about as a couple until another health issue came along. And of course,
Yeah, for
now
sure.
with this health issue, I have getting older. I have other health issues that are like now taking precedence. Okay, it's nice not to have to talk about that health issue,
and we can
Yeah,
share
for sure.
and
And so this has kind of opened up the doors for you guys to have that
and,
communication.
and now that we're both getting older and we have all these things that come with getting older, we've already dealt with serious life things, so nothing new. Okay, yeah, another scan. All right, yeah, no problem. Another MRI. I've had 10. Okay.
yeah, I
No,
mean, a
good
lot of it
point.
over the years has been living life, really. I mean, I feel like we've traveled more, maybe. We took trips every year, pretty much, cruises, seen the world, and just enjoyed life. So it makes you appreciate it a little more, I think.
Yeah,
So
I love that. I'm actually gonna ask. Who do I want to ask? Kristen. I just want to ask you guys. Kristen, did you find out about your ocular melanoma diagnosis? Were you alone, or did you have someone with you? And if so, who?
I was alone for the appointment where I saw like my 10th doctor to get another opinion on what the next procedure would be, another tube shunt for the increased pressure. And she was talking about white cells to her fellows, and those were kind of like trigger words. I knew something was going on. And she took an ultrasound on my eye and told me that she saw a tumor. So I was alone for that, but my parents live close to the city, so they drove up and she snuck them in the back door to to come in and like talk through more of the details. So I mean, it definitely made a difference.
Yeah.
Kind of, like it is like a shell shock moment to have support there. But I do feel like where I'm at in life is a really weird, unique stage where, my emergency contact still like my mom. And even though Kyle and I have a really good foundation of 3 years in a relationship, I did have like a balance between sharing this burden with, my boyfriend and then my parents, and kind of who do I confide in different moments, and who do I bring to my appointments and things like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Alexis, what about you? How, like, when you
Yeah,
were
so
diagnosed, was Duncan with you?
initially, the day, I was alone when they said, "Oh, it looks like a tumor, or maybe a detached retina." But then that series of appointments, luckily everyone was close enough. We went to another. Duncan was there when they said, "Oh no, it's not a tumor; it is a detached retina." And then that went from, okay, you're gonna go off and maybe get surgery. So quickly switching roles because we have kids. My mom and I went to that next place, and that was when she said, "Yeah, no, you definitely have ocular melanoma."
So, and
So
then,
yeah, just having my mom there was, I mean, I was kind of numb, obviously, the whole day. The rest of the day.
yeah, I can relate to
But
that.
it was right shortly after that is when COVID started. So a lot of my appointments after that were alone, and that sucked. But I
I
did,
definitely understand that.
yes, because you were right there. You were right
Yeah,
there.
I think you, me, and Kristen, we all got diagnosed right in the middle of all of the things going on in 2020 to now.
Yes. Yeah. Well, luckily, yes, my plaque did finish right before the world shut down, because you guys were a little bit after me, I think. But still, after that, I mean, so yeah, I wasn't alone for the plaque, but everything else, and then obviously flying to Philadelphia, and
Mhm.
We
So,
drove.
we
Emily,
drove.
sorry, Alexis.
Yeah.
So Emily, you and Ian were across seas from each other when you heard about his diagnosis. Is that what am I hearing that correctly?
So bad for Ian. Yeah, he was in China of all places. So like with the language barrier too, it was just like they were like, "You have cancer," and I don't think there was a lot of, I don't know, like compassion and empathy necessarily because of that barrier. And so I think for him, it was a pretty frightening experience. And I remember that the phone call really was kind of traumatic, just hearing him calling me in tears. But then following that initial diagnosis, I flew out to meet him in California, and we pursued treatment here in the States, like pretty much together. And his mom was there, and we had family supporting both of us. So
Yeah.
that was
So this wasn't on the questions. I apologize, but I feel like this is kind of just a question that maybe we could address. Everyone here has got experience around the OM treatment, like for the eye treatment. And then Emily, I believe, is the only one who has experience around metastatic treatment. But in general, for these treatments, have you found like you have been able to, I guess, if you're the patient, rely on your support people, rely on those relationships? Have you felt like that's been helpful to be able to rely on them in the treatment period? If so, like what was helpful about the support from your spouse or your family members? Maybe pick two things that were helpful. And then for your spouse, what did you find kind of that you were needed for? Or I don't know, like that as a caregiver or as a support person, what was kind of your role? Did you find as you went through this journey of the diagnosis to then the treatment of the eye? Um, what did that look like for you, Kristen?
I would say first of all, like so I had a nucleation and my left eye was removed. And that was because of the tube shunt that I had place to drain. Like Carol Shields thought it would be a pathway out for those cancer cells. So that's why we chose enucleation. And, that thought was just like something you hear about in horror movies. And so, like, it was really unsettling to me. And after I had the procedure, I just was so scared to remove that bandage. And it was just such a crazy moment that I would say that Kyle, that his biggest support to me was like reassuring that he like thought it was beautiful, that like everything was going to be okay. Like he still saw me the same. Because, like my appearance like changed to me drastically, and I think like you get a lot of encouragement from like your family and friends because they just want to like just say something nice, but like it means a lot different from like your significant significant other to cure, that they still find you the same. And I would say that was really huge. And then another thing, when I started researching like the trials that I could maybe do to prevent Mets, Kyle stepped up and helped me research those, and he was really involved in that. And that was just also really attractive on my end to see, because, he was just in it with me, and, like this was his person in his life he was fighting for too. And so those two things I think were the biggest.
Awesome. And Alexis and Duncan, what about for you guys?
Yeah, I would say, well, since, with the two kids and going to Philadelphia for the treatment, there was a lot of stuff that had to be picked up with, with the kids, and Duncan stepped in and did everything that was needed. I couldn't get Duncan to come with me and have someone to be with the kids for 6 days while I was out there. So he worked it out, made everything. He came halfway. Me and my mom went. He came halfway and spent the last bit of there. And I had a dear friend who took over and took my kids for the other couple days. I think that's been, a huge step up with that. And what else? I don't know. Like as soon as I found out, and I'm dealing with insurance and appointments and craziness of all that. And Duncan was like, "Oh, I found this like seminar that we can go to. We can fly to Texas and da da da." And I'm like, "What? What? Like, I don't want to be going. What? It was overwhelming for me. But looking back, I'm like, how endearing that he's sitting downstairs after work and researching what we can do. And he's like, there's support. There's other people out there. And I'm like, what do you mean there's other people? Yeah. So I would say those are probably my two biggest things.
I love that.
Yeah.
Emily, what about for you?
For us, Ian's mom was really amazing in dealing with a lot of the logistical stuff. She would deal with insurance for us and do a lot of the research around the different trials and treatments. My parents helped us with our kids because Ian's cancer metastasized when I was pregnant with our second kid, and we had a 2-year-old. So we needed a lot of help flying to MD Anderson, and so everyone stepped up. Our friends even just, showing Ian that they were still there and they wanted to come over, and they would play music even in times when he was lying in bed and couldn't get out of bed. So we had an amazing support system. I think for me, my role was really allowing Ian to express his deepest fears, to cry when he needed to just be that sounding board, and to not give up on the hope. It was really hard for me in the days leading up to his death, the months leading up to his death, where, I wanted him to write letters to our kids or having harder conversations around dying, where he would say, Emily, like everyone thinks I'm going to die. I don't need you to give up on me too. And just really being respectful of the fact that this was his journey and how I could support him on his journey, and also getting my needs met as his caregiver, and the thought of, me being here without him in the future. So yeah, I would say that was really my role, is just giving him the reins.
I feel like that's such a good point. And that's got to be hard too,
Yeah.
I think, especially in a spousal relationship where I feel like, it's tricky because, if it's your sister or if it's your mom or your daughter or your son even, it's just a different dynamic in the relationship. It's still challenging. It's still got its ups and downs. It's still got boundaries that have to be set, but it's very unique when this is your spouse who's going through this, or your the person that you want to, in Kristen and Kyle's case, like who you guys have contemplated these long-term life questions, or maybe you hadn't, and now you're being forced to confront them. Those kind of long-term thinking about the future and what's this going to look like, and what do I need from you, and what do you need from me? And we talked back in our previous session, Jennifer Drew was talking about just having that open dialogue of communication and how helpful that can be. So Joe and Steven, what did you guys find was helpful I guess, Stephen, what was helpful for you that you noticed Joe doing to kind of support you throughout this process of your treatment?
The treatment. I was treated at Wills Eye Hospital at Jefferson, and at the time, I had to stay in the room. I think now you can go out with the plaque and go to a hotel, but I couldn't leave. I couldn't walk out in the hall. Fortunately, it was only an hour and 15 minutes away. So Joe drove me. We got a hotel the night before. He took me out to dinner. He was there, another couple that we're friends with. We were actually married in a double wedding with them. And
That's
one
so
of them was the one that took me to the day I was diagnosed. He was in the room with me when I was diagnosed. They were able to come to the hospital and visit me. They were in my room. It made it way less lonely. And again, I couldn't even stick my head out the door to talk to anybody.
Yeah.
The food was pretty bad, so they brought me food every day, lunch and dinner.
Don't make
Um,
me hungry.
Nothing against Jefferson Hospital, but it wasn't really good food, at least back in 2008. And then one of the other couple, Brian, brought me an air card. So this is 2008. I didn't have a smartphone. So, I mean, I'm alone in that room. I had my laptop with no internet access because there was no Wi-Fi. We didn't have Wi-Fi in 2008. He brought me this air card. I plugged it into my laptop and I could go online and occupy my time because TV was okay, but you have this patch on the plaque and you don't really want to move your eyes. So I could sit with my laptop, go online and occupy my time. So, food, internet, and just
It's funny,
company.
like what those little kind of creature comforts can do during treatment, and how we can be supported by our people in doing that. So I had a question that I had kind of pop up in my brain, and I'm going to try and remember it. Um, oh, okay. So in your relationships, as you guys have been confronted with this diagnosis and the treatment, kind of after, I feel like there's this period, right? You go through diagnosis, and it's insane and it's crazy, and you have all these scans and doctor's appointments initially to basically check and see, is this cancer already spreading? And once you get through that and you're in the clear there, assuming that you're in the clear there, then you go through this period of time of just adjusting, I think, afterwards, where you're adjusting as a family to, what does this look like for scans? What does this look like for the future? And those questions of like, what is life going to look like? And kind of confronting the unknown becomes a big part of your day to day reality. Um, how have you tackled, or you and Kyle tackled, kind of confronting the unknown as a couple right now, Kristen?
Yeah, it's a great question. Um, like the biggest thing I think was, after you get out of that whirlwind of diagnosis and treatment, and then you start to just research so you're prepared on what could be next. That kind of brought me into the light of, patients who are experiencing Mets, and how, like myself, who's a class 2 um, diagnosed patient, that could be something that I face in my future. And I had like a really real conversation with Kyle once I let that sink in, and was like, this has happened to me, and this is like 50% chance that it could, come back in the next 5 years. And at that point, we could be 32 and married and have a kid. And I was like, this has happened in my life, and I don't want to say that it has to happen to yours. And that was like such a hard conversation to have, because, clearly it was coming out of love, and I didn't want to say those things, but sorry, I'm getting a little emotional, but it was important to, have that reality check, and those, just those honest conversations to be like, is this what you want too? And he just had like the best answers, and he would be like, well, if we did have a child and that happened, at least I would have like a little Kristen in the future with me. And, that was just the right answer, but it's still hard.
No, for sure. And I feel like you're going to make us all emotional, Kristen. Um, so I guess I feel like we have a very special opportunity to hear from Emily, because she was the person who decided to stay.
Yeah.
And I mean, I feel like you had mentioned in your story, you had mentioned that Ian kind of gave you that out and said, do you want this? Because this is what it could look like.
I mean, he did and he didn't. I think Ian was like so incredibly optimistic that it was hard for me to go there. I think both of us were just like, we're going to live in the moment and make the most of our life. And like, honestly, we chose not to really look at the numbers because we knew that they were not so great. And I don't know, like, so Ian, they wanted to enucleate Ian's eye like right before our wedding. And he was like, no, I just don't want to make it about my eye. Like, I want to make this about us. And I don't know. I just feel like really, like, it's been my worst nightmare has come true essentially. Like, I never thought that my life would bring me here. And I'm like, okay, because we chose to, like your boyfriend said, like I have two little Ians. Like, we lived life like he would be here forever, and we lived it really really well. More, I think we lived it fully, and yes, it was less amount of time that we had together, but I have like zero regrets in choosing to love him, choosing to marry him, to start a family with him, and even supporting him through the entire journey of caretaking and saying our final goodbye. Like,
Yeah, I feel like that's such a validating, I think, thing for people who are listening who maybe are in the dating world, and worry about bringing the weight of their diagnosis into a relationship. So just take it from Kristen and Emily that the chance to love and the chance to live your lives fully is way more important, and it holds so much more weight. So. Um, Sorry, I'm like having a moment. So I guess like that was kind of more of a question. I feel like maybe for just Kristen and Emily, but do Stephen and Alexis, do you guys have anything? Did you feel insecure at all in your relationship, or were you worried about these kind of questions of the future? I guess the better question for you guys would be like, how did you navigate some of those discussions about the future, and like, have you had them? About like anything? Do you feel like you want to have them?
Yeah, we have it's terrible, and like everyone's going to be crying. Jeez Louise. So, yeah, just the conversation between us was, more, my thoughts were,
You're going to set me off now as well.
like, if something was going to happen to me, like, about the kids, if he was going to stay in the States or move back to England with them. And we had that talk like pretty early on when everything was going on, and he was, shocked that I was even having these thoughts, but I just wanted to know that they would be here around all of our, big family here. We have family in England too, but I just couldn't imagine them moving there. So that was our
Yeah, so just being able to address those fears that you have, even if they haven't happened, and they won't necessarily happen, but just being able to communicate those to each other and just say, this is something I'm really worried about, and I need to have the space to talk to you about it. And
Yeah.
obviously, the way that I just said it, I'm sure is not how it happens, because I've had those kinds of conversations with Danny too, of just like, I mean, just for me, like one of the things that I was really worried about is like I need some reassurance that like you're gonna get the help you need emotionally and mentally if things go south. Like, because I don't expect that you're gonna be able to handle this without therapy, without extra support. Like, I need to know that you're gonna make sure that our kids know that they're allowed to be emotional. Like, those are some things that I just needed reassurance and validation for. But I had to figure out how to communicate that, and that was work that I had to do.
can I add something there too?
Yeah.
Like, just because I have experienced Ian dying, and I've worked with a lot of people who because I do grief coaching now, who had their loved one who had a cancer or some sort of terminal illness place strict guidelines on how they wanted the life to look after. And I think what's really helpful is when you can give broad guidelines. Like, these are the values I want to instill. These are the lessons. These are the this or the that. Just because after a loss, there's so much to navigate, and having the freedom to move or to get support or to do whatever you need to do to set yourself up for success and your family up for success is really helpful. Because I've seen others who want to honor their person's dying wishes, and they feel so much guilt if they decide to, if they need to do something else, but it might actually help them. So I just want to share that, and I hope that's okay.
No, I feel like that's a good point to focus on as you're having these kinds of conversations in your relationship, and you're worried about the unknowns. To maybe not be don't be too focused on the actual what is going to happen, because none of us have control over that.
Right.
And we don't know. We just have no idea of knowing what we're going to need in the moment, were anything to shift. But we can say these are the things that are important to me. And so I guess for Alexis and Duncan, like Alexis, it's important for you that your kids know your family, and that they know them well. And just to that's obviously already been communicated to Duncan. So that's just like valuable communication to have. Joe and Stephen, I guess I feel like I keep reading your names backwards, but well, I think I'm reading you in order of who I see on the screen. That's what I'm reading. So Joe and Stephen, like how have you guys navigated some of these kind of unknown conversations about what could happen in the future, or how to prepare, or have you felt like you've even needed that?
I've always been uncomfortable talking about things, but because of my diagnosis, I've had to, and I have shared a lot of personal things like that. But I mean, I don't. It's like I don't want to bring people into that. I don't want to tell them, because then now all of a sudden that's a reality, or that makes me all about cancer instead of something else. But having those kind of conversations, I mean, I'm always thinking about them, and I think sometimes it makes Joe uncomfortable when I tell him I do think about these things, but it makes a lot of other things easier. Uh, Everybody has demons. Me being willing to talk about my journey, I think, makes a lot of other people that I talk to more comfortable about talking about theirs. So I open up, and they're like, "Oh, well, yeah." Well, then they start sharing their demons, and it's like, well, "Yeah, well, we can talk about this." Makes it easier. But
Oh, I think that's a good point.
yeah, and oh, I just had a thought, I lost it. But then it makes other life events easier to talk about and to deal with. Since my diagnosis, my mother died, Joe's mother died, my father died. We've had friends die, and for me, I think it's made it a lot easier to handle things like that, and to be willing to talk about them when other people might be uncomfortable or think that you're uncomfortable talking about it. It's like, no, talk about it. I'm okay. Tell me what's on your mind. It's not uncomfortable. So yeah, it's made other journeys more palatable. And I ended up in the emergency room. I had pain in the area of my liver. The first thing I thought of was, okay, this is it. This is metastasis. But I know that from other people who have had metastasis that you're not going to necessarily feel any pain. So I'm thinking, okay, it don't go there. Went to the emergency room, had all of the tests, and it turns out it was like gastritis or something else. But I can't say I was panicking. I was in pain, but it's like, okay, here we go. I think had I not been through eye cancer, I would. I don't know if I would have made it. I feel like I would have been a mess. I don't think I would have said, "Take me to the emergency room." I would have said, "No, staying home. I don't touch me." So yeah, it's made me react very differently, I think.
Yeah,
It's
for
hard to
sure.
imagine what I would be like without it, but I know what I was like before, and it's like, okay, yeah, I think I can handle a lot more.
Yeah,
All
for me, it
right.
was more of a day-to-day kind of thing.
Mhm.
I feel like we didn't really talk about future in that context, but was more, okay, what do we need to do now to get, to take care of this, rather than, talk about the future, which, that's just maybe a fault of mine. I don't know. It's not.
I mean, I
But I
I
feel like it
stopped.
could be a strength too, like to kind of have that balance, right?
Mm,
I
Um,
stopped thinking about the future. I stopped trying to plan anything more than a couple of months in advance. Look, with my career, it's like I'm not thinking that. I'm just thinking about today. Like Joe said, think about the now. Do what you need to do now. Enjoy life, live life. But
live life. Yeah.
hey, okay, I'm not thinking 10 years down the road.
Get
yeah.
dog.
I still don't think 10 years. I don't think a year down the road.
Well, we need to start wrapping it up pretty soon, but I do want to end on a lighter note. I know we've talked about some heavy stuff, but I want to talk just briefly about dating. So I want to talk about, what have you found? I guess I'm going to operate on the assumption that all of you, because you're here and you value your relationships or you value the relationships you've had, that you've kind of shifted in your relationship to a point where you value each other more, where you value your people in your life more. Just because this diagnosis does make you much more aware of your mortality, and it just helps. I think that the gift of it is that it does bring us closer or give us that desire to be closer to the people that we love. So just like what's maybe a favorite type of thing that you like to do to stay close with each other in your relationships. So Kristen.
Yeah. Like especially with everything happening in COVID times, there hasn't been like a time where I feel like I could just do like some big travel trip with Kyle to, get away from it all. But we do go to South Haven, Michigan sometimes. His parents have a place there, and we've gone with his family and just have been able to unplug that way and get in a new environment because, like I spent a couple months at my parents' house healing. Then I came back to my apartment, and that felt like I had too much responsibility with, getting groceries, and I wasn't ready for that. So just kind of going somewhere else to unplug was a huge relief for me and for him too, to just kind of disassociate from it a little bit.
I love that. Okay, Alexis and Duncan, what about you guys? What do you guys do to bring each other closer?
Well, I think with everything that's happened, it's kind of reinforced the fact that your family and your relationship is, by far the most important thing, in your life. And we focus on it. It sounds like a bit of a cliche, but we do focus on, the day to day. We want to create long lasting memories for, not just ourselves but our children as well. So we go on as many trips as we possibly can. We try to get out to dinner without the kids every now and again. We're actually going out tonight, which is good. And we just stay as strong and positive as we possibly can, really, in fairly difficult times. And I'm the kind of person that, and I know it's talked about previously. I'm the kind of person that doesn't really think too far into the future. So, thinking what I'd do in 10 years is not something that really has ever passed across my mind, and it doesn't really. I don't really think about it a great deal now, anyway. So I was always the kind of person who lived in the moment, really. So, as far as that's concerned, that's how I kind of live my life, or we live our lives on a day-to-day basis, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and I know you guys have taken some really cool trips, like after scans, right, Alexis?
Yes, yeah. Like I said, and others can relate. The 3 month living by 3 months is kind of how it's been. But yeah, that's fine. I enjoy it. I really enjoy every day. We just do what we can to the fullest. And the COVIDness crazy last year's kind of stunk because we weren't doing much. But now, yeah, we're back at doing whatever we possibly can do.
I'm not sure whether we'll ever get back to England the way things are going. We're trying to get there next year.
I hope we get to.
Yes, we're going. I don't care what's going on.
You will figure it out.
We're going for a couple weeks. See you there, July.
It's going to be great.
No one else wants to go.
I would love to go. Can I go and do all the Harry Potter things, please?
Yeah.
Okay, so Joe and Stephen, what's one thing that you guys love doing now to, stay close with each other and just value your relationship more?
I love doing musical things with him. We've done. He took up bass guitar, and we actually formed a little band. That was fun.
Oh, that's fun.
And we bring handbells together now. Recently, that's a new development. So
So plus, since I've been able to retire, and I was in church music, which meant every holiday I was busy. So now I can choose when I work, take holidays off, go to family events when they happen, instead of after I'm done with work. Do musical things by choice, not because of work. It's been good.
I love that. Okay, Emily, I'm not leaving you out of this question. I just wanted to put you at the end because there's actually a question or maybe a comment that came in that I wanted to have you address if you're willing to. But before we go there, so just talk us, I guess, just share maybe what was one of yours and Ian's favorite things to do with your family as you were, newly dating, newly married, and then had, young kids.
Well, I guess one of the biggest things was we did kind of make a bucket list together of stuff that we wanted to do just if you were to pass away. And um, one of my favorite memories was we did this ridiculous road trip from Colorado to California with my 4-month-old and like a 2.5-year-old. So yeah, we just tried to make the most of the moments where he was feeling good, a lot of by traveling and spending a little extra money on like tickets to a basketball game or whatever it may be. Just we were like, you get one shot at this. So
Yeah.
living it up.
So we obviously have some people listening who, some of us, the comment that just came in, I'm going to put it up on the screen, or Paige, can you put it up on the screen for us? So Marla says that there are some of us who have no partner. Either the partner is deceased now or you are divorced and you've always been single. Some who have few family members to support them. So basically, she feels like we do this alone with no relationships. So I guess my comment here, and then Emily, I wanted to let you speak to this, is that I think we're as alone as we decide that we're alone. And if you don't have family close, you don't have a spouse, if you don't have a partner in life, then I feel like this is one of those times that if you need that and you know that you need that connection and that relationship, then it's a place where you can take ownership of that. You can take ownership of developing those relationships. But I know Emily kind of has a unique kind of perspective because she's now in this newly widowed phase as of 2019 after Ian passed away. So, Emily, what's helped you in kind of redefining this?
Yeah, well, I think loneliness, exactly as you said, is kind of what we make it. And I had to do a lot of work around loneliness after Ian died because I didn't. Yeah, I mean, it's just like everything is different. You wake up and your person isn't there to say good morning to and to have coffee with. And yeah, loneliness put me in a really hard place for a while. But the truth is that I worked on reframing it. I asked myself what I could do with my alone time. Why was I giving so much value to other people's thoughts over mine? I also sought other relationships. And the sad reality is that I don't think that our friends and family are always the best support systems, at least in terms of grief post loss, because they're going through their own stuff too, and it could be that in the anticipatory grief phrase, like sometimes they can't support us. So I joined communities, I joined widow communities, I joined solo mom communities to find those connections. And honestly, I've connected with people who I've connected with who through struggle and through hardship have been some of the deepest relationships that I've formed to this date. So yeah, I do fully agree that you're never powerless in any of these situations. They can still be hard and awful, and we still have the power to change them for the better. To support
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, I'm so grateful for all of you for being here, for sharing your stories. I haven't seen any questions come in through the Q&A, and I feel like I asked you guys a ton of questions. I just wanted to thank you guys again for being here. We do need to wrap it up, but if you guys have anything else that you want to share about your stories, feel free to post that in the social wall on Socio, and we'll be able to see more about your stories there. And those of you listening, feel free to check out their bios. You can read a little bit more about their stories. And of course, you can connect with them individually if you have questions. So thank you guys. Let's all wave goodbye. And I will address the last little bit of our session before we end it for the day.